Okay, so how do you create a Docker container?
By running the image.
Okay, so what are the various options? Like it is Docker container run or Docker run. Okay, -d to run in the daemon mode. Okay, and if the container requires interactive terminal, interactive input and pseudo terminal access, you would provide -i, -t or -it. And you can also name the container as, Nginx one, something like this. And finally, whatever image that you have to run. Okay. So this usually starts either CMD or entry point or CMD plus entry point command together. Okay, if it is available. And that process will be the starting process of the container. Correct? And also we said that in case if you have to provide a different CMD. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to provide it here. Okay. Let's say if I say sleep 20. So this will go and replace the default CMD, which is there in Nginx latest. Okay. Even though if CMD is not available, okay, this sleep 20 will now be considered as a new CMD. Okay. If it is there, it will be overridden. Otherwise, it will be created as sleep 20. And in case if you also have entry point and you wish to, replace the entry point, it should be in the form of a flag. Like you should use hyphen entry point and then space followed by, in any entry point that you can give. Okay, so if I use entry point as sleep and, just CMD as 20 like this, the final command will be sleep 20. So it will override both CMD and entry point. I mean, the default ones, which is, which are available inside this Nginx latest image. Okay, so this is what we learned. So understanding how to override CMD and how to override entry point is important. Okay. So that is about, what we learned in the first part. So now, so let's talk about the other part. So we still have, few commands left. Okay, so what about running a command inside a running container? Okay, so you started a container. Now the container is running. Okay, it is running with its starting process. Okay, it can be CMD entry point, it can be both, but it is in the running state. Now I want to run extra command. Okay, so people usually say this as, SSHing into the container or, running command into the container in a container or logging into the container. They'll use different words. Okay, all are same. It is like, we are just running some additional commands inside a running container. So how do you do that? So using Docker container exec or Docker exec, like it is like executing a command in this particular container. Okay, now this -it depends upon what command you are trying to run. Okay, so in case if the container is running and you want to start a shell process or a bash process. Okay, so let's say I do Docker exec and container ID, let's say I'll say it as web and a command, let's say I wanted to use as bash. Okay, so in this case, if you're trying to invoke sh or bash, you should always give -it as we already discussed. Okay. It can be anything like I can do Docker exec, okay, -it, let's say container ID is web. Now I wanted to list all the files in this container. I simply do ls-l. Got it, guys? Clear? Or any questions? It can be any command. Okay, so once you have a container running, you can run any command.
So it is like it is always with IT only, right?
No,
Whether
so
we
let me show you. Okay, so I'm logging into my Docker VM. Okay, so let's first check all the containers which are in the running state and stopped state. So currently there are no containers. Okay, so let me start the Ubuntu. Okay, so Docker run. Okay, what I'll do is I'll try to run this in the daemon mode, and the name of the container, let's say it is OS, and let's run Ubuntu latest command, latest image. Okay, so Docker ps-a, you can see the Ubuntu container, which starts CMD, I mean bash process as the starting command, and it is currently in the running state. Okay. Now I wanted to see the host name. Okay. Of this particular container. Okay. So usually the container ID will be the host name. Okay. But, I can prove it. So for this, what I'll do is I'll simply do docker container exec or docker exec. Okay. And after that, you need to provide the container name or ID. Either you can use this or use this. So I always prefer using the names. Okay. And then let's run any command, host name. Okay. You can see here, it printed the host name. And if you see, the container is still running. Okay. So the initial process is bin bash. Okay. This is an extra process or a command that I executed. For this, I don't require any -it. Okay, similarly, if I have to know what all files available in /var. Okay, so for this, I don't require -it because I'm not trying to invoke any bash or shell process. Okay, but if I require, bash or sh, okay, like I can do bash. So what this is going to do is it is going to invoke the bash which is available in bin bash. Okay, uh, I always prefer using the full path. Okay, so instead of using only bash, okay, always try to prefer using /bin/bash or /bin/sh. And always remember, not every container image will have both shells. Some images like nginx will have bash and sh, but some like Albine will only have sh. Okay, in order to reduce the size of the Docker image, they include only one bash. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm executing this bash command inside this OS container. Now you can see I'm inside the container. Okay, so here I can run any command as usual. Okay, like I can run host name. Again, it will print the same output as before. Like you can directly run the command and it will print, or else you can just invoke bash and then you can just start typing your any command. Okay, anything is fine. Okay, now let's do one thing. Let's install a package. Okay, so I'm installing a package known as you can install any package. Okay, so here it says yum not found. Okay, let me do apt update and then install this. Okay, so this package will basically display some whatever words that you give in the form of ASCII text. Okay, if I do figlet in DevOps, it is going to just display the ASCII text like this. Okay, so now we install this inside this container. Okay, can you guys tell me whether these changes will be permanently stored inside the image? Because this Ubuntu container is created from the Ubuntu image and I installed something. Okay, so will this get installed in the image as well, or it is only restricted to the container?
Only to the container.
Okay, so usually, as we already said, your Docker images are immutable. Okay, a container created out of it cannot go and change any files in that image. Then why these changes and where these changes are applied? So these changes are only applied to the container in a layer called writable layer. Okay, I'll talk about this again in volume section. Okay, so when you have an image, okay, so that image has a file system. Okay, all common files. Okay, it will have. So when I create a container from this image, okay, Docker creates another layer called writable layer. Okay, whatever changes that you do, okay, will stay inside this writable layer only. Okay, so for example, so there is this file called hello.txt which is there in the image. So inside this hello.txt, the text is only hello. Okay, now when you create a container, out of this same image, the container will also have this hello.txt with the same text. Now, if I change this hello to hello world, so what will happen? How this hello.txt file will be handled is that file will be copied from the image to the container, and it is modified here. The same file will be modified with a different text. Okay. Now the thing is, whenever we destroy the container, the writable layer contents, okay, also gets destroyed. Okay, so there won't be any data persistency. Okay, so the writable layer contents, whatever modifications that you do to the container will also, it's destroyed. Okay, now I can prove it. Okay, so if you exit from this extra command that you ran, that is bash. Okay, so now you are back to your Docker host. Okay, your container is still running. So what I'll do is I'll simply kill this container using docker rm-f and the name of the container. So this is destroyed. Now what I'll do is I'll create the same container, okay, like OS with the same Docker image again. I'll try to exec uh, into that container. Now, if I just check whether that particular package is available or not, it says that command is not found, because when you create a container again, it will start from scratch with a empty writable layer. Got it? Clear, guys?
Yep.
Clear, Vikram. There's one doubt. Like, if in case like we have to write some script,
Hmm.
it's a like a medium script or long script.
Hmm.
So will it be applicable to this writable layer only, and how it is done?
No, whatever you execute, right? So
Hmm.
those contents are actually changed in the writable layer. Okay, if your command or any script changes, let's say some file in slash etc slash something, okay, so that file will be available in the writable layer, but you won't see the difference in the file system inside the container. So both the writable layer and the the read-only file system, it's a common file system. Okay,
Okay.
you cannot see that a file belong to a writable layer or a file belong to the image layer as a read-only file. You won't see that difference. Docker internally manages so that the image is not impacted. So it creates everything in the form of a writable layer, and as soon as your container gets destroyed, the writable layer contents gets destroyed. I mean, whatever changes, it can be any change. Okay, if you install a package, obviously it will install files in etc, some log files in var log, right? Some system configuration files, correct? Some man pages are there.
Okay. But if we have to run a script, so we
Hmm.
use the same thing like in the place of command cmd.
Yeah,
Um,
correct. So when
okay.
you do docker exec -it, okay, let's say you have a shell script, okay,
Right.
you just give that shell script,
Okay.
like how you invoke. So this exe is to run a command, or it can be a process, anything. I can simply do ps here, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So now the question is, let's say I want, whatever Figlet package that I've installed, and I want it to, store in the Docker image which I created. Okay, so it is not possible. So if you want that extra package, okay, to be permanent, either you create a new Docker image, okay, through Docker files and all, or else there is one more method, okay, which is usually not recommended. So you can take a container. Okay, so that container has everything required for your application, plus you included some packages like Figlet. Now what I can do is I can take this container and commit it as a image. Okay, I mean, I can store the container as a image. Clear? So
Running container.
yeah. So ideally you should stop a container so that the file system won't change further, and then you can commit it as a new image. So it is like if you have an EC2 instance, okay, you have an AMI. So usually take the snapshot of either EBS volume or create a new AMI, right? It is something like that.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, let me start the same. Okay, it is already there. So the container is already there, right? So I'll exec into this. So what I'll do is I'll repeat the same process. Okay, I'm installing this Figlet package. Okay. Okay, so I know that it is installed. So let me just confirm. Okay. So I configured my image. Okay, sorry, I configured my container with all these packages like this. Okay. Now do Docker PS. Your container is in the running state. Now I want to commit this container as a new image. So if you look at Docker help, you'll get that commit. So let me just show it. Commit. Create a new image from the container changes. So this is the common question which is asked multiple times. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm committing the OS container. Okay, if you remember the name of the container is OS, or else you can use container ID, anything, as a new image. Image name is up to you. Since I created from Ubuntu, what I'll do is I'll say Ubuntu with uh, something like this, and the tag I wanted to use as 1.0. Then what happened here? Your container in its current state is now committed as a new image. So if I do Docker images or Docker image ls, you will see that a new image is created. Okay. You can also see the difference in size. The original image Ubuntu is just 77 MB, but the one with Figlet package installed is 126 because of that extra package size. You can also see the increase in the size of the image. Okay. And since this image is now changed, you can also see the image ID, which is originally E34, is now C6FF because there is a change in the image. There are changes in the image layers. Okay. Of course, you can also see Docker image history, and you can see the history of the image which I just created. That is Ubuntu with Figlet and 1.0 as tag. Okay. So you will see, some files are added. Okay. You have invoked bin by bash and then installed something. Okay. So this created a new layer. Okay. And it changed the image. Okay. So now this Ubuntu with Figlet image has the Figlet package because we committed that container. Now what I'll do is I'll remove the existing, the OS container. Okay, I'll create the same container, but this time I will create with my custom image. Ubuntu with Figlet and the tag is 1.0. Same thing. And then I would do docker exec -it os, and I'll just invoke the bash process. Okay, inside this, I'll simply see whether Figlet is there or not. So it is there. Okay.
And this particular image is still in local, right? So
Yes,
we
it is
didn't
still in local.
push.
You need to push it to Docker Hub. Okay, so I'll ask a question on that. Okay, so you don't have to actually invoke bash and then run this Figlet by. Okay, so as I already said, you can run any command directly. Okay, I hope this clears the doubt.
And like if we have multiple commands, that also possible.
If you have multiple, no,
Multiple
you
commands.
can't. No, it is only one a single line. You can give it in the form of a string, and then it will work. Let's say um like this.
Oh,
Okay.
So Vikram, in case we run a small script to know the anything like CPU utilization in a container, so we
Mm.
get the output instantly like this
Mm.
hello bye, we get it
Yeah,
here.
correct.
Okay.
And we can pass the shell script, like executing the shell
Anything.
script from outside also.
Yeah, anything. Not from outside. You should do exec and then start that shell script. See, as I already said, even before you start a container, right? I just ran this container. Okay. So let me show that as well. So Docker um rm-fos. Okay. So I know that this image has Figlet installed. Okay. But the default CMD of this image will be from Ubuntu. Okay. If you try to inspect it, it will still be the bash. Okay. But I can override that particular sorry, 1 second. Let me remote again. I can override that default CMD by passing it like this, right? But again, I need to remove -d because if I use -d, again, that process goes into background and then I can't see the output, right? So I can do it like this. See what happened here, right?
Yeah. All right.
Okay. But if you see the container status, it will be in the exited state. So I have to go and manually remove this. That's the reason if you feel that a container will exit immediately after running its command or process, always include -rm so that it gets created, executes, and then automatically it gets removed. Okay. -rm. Clear?
Suppose if I have a shell script to execute something, okay. So that shell script we cannot pass it from the Docker host, right?
No, that you can pass it, but it needs volume concept. Okay.
Okay.
I now a question before proceeding further. I have this Docker image Ubuntu with Figlet 1.0. I want this to I want to push this to Docker Hub. Okay. So what are the various steps I should follow?
We should authenticate and then push.
So if I push it directly like this, will it work?
No, Docker login.
Hmm? Oh yeah, Docker login is there after that.
Then we have to create a token and copy that token to this password
The
thing.
Docker login command, yes, correct.
And then we
And
create a personal token there on that Docker Hub website.
hmm?
Then we have when we write Docker login, we get the username and password. We like paste that token to password, and then we can go and push the
No,
image
the thing is, can I push the image as it is?
No, you
as
have to tag it. You have
tag
to
it,
tag
right?
it.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so you need to tag it with your username.
Username.
Yeah, then only it will work. But this is not the case for other, repositories like ECR and all. Okay, so they might require a different approach. Maybe they'll ask you to tag it with the URL of the repository. Okay, but Docker Hub expects you to tag it with the username. Okay, clear? Got it, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so this is about committing. Okay, so this is mostly this will be asked in the interviews. Okay, I still have this port mapping. Yes, so we need to understand what is port mapping. Okay, so what is the meaning of port mapping? And let me first explain it diagrammatically, and then okay. So if you consider this as a Docker host, okay, or you can take this as a simple VM EC2 instance. Okay, let's say I install Nginx using yum install Nginx and all. Okay, and I did systemctl start Nginx, so Nginx started. Correct. Now by default, this Nginx listens on which port, guys? Port 80,
80.
right?
80.
Okay, so I can do http:// EC2 instance IP address :80 in order to reach this Nginx. Okay, So what will happen if I try to install one more web server? It can be, Apache web server that also listens on 80. Okay. So if I install, that won't be a problem. But if I try to start it on the same port 80, will it work?
Conflict.
Port conflict. It won't work because already there is a process which is already listening on 80. Either you change it to 80 and start, otherwise it won't start. Okay. But if you take the case of our Docker host, okay, let's say you have Docker, okay, so this is your host, Docker host where Docker is installed. Okay, so I try to create multiple Nginx containers. Okay, I'm calling them as C1, C2, and C3. Okay, so all these are Nginx containers. But how come, all these Nginx containers are running without any port conflict? But when I, ran those Nginx processes on the host, they are failing because of port collision. Okay, but as a container, how these are running? Correct. We also did it. Let me show you. Docker run in the daemon mode. Okay. I'll name one container as C1, which is based on Nginx latest. Okay. Okay. I'll start one more. C2. Okay. Another one. C3. Okay. And if I do Docker ps-a, see all containers are running. And all are running on port 80. Right? How this is possible? Okay, so here Docker containers are completely isolated. They run inside their own isolated spaces. Okay, so we talked about the concept of namespaces, right? Where we have mount namespace, PID namespace. Okay, correct. Process namespace, file system namespace. Correct. So
Right.
all these are isolated and they run on their own port numbers 80 internally. Okay. Now, these are isolated, from the host machine as well. Okay. All the host machine can see the process. So there is a sort of isolation or an air gap between the host and the containers, which means if I'm someone sitting outside, I cannot simply do HTTP EC2 instance IP address or the Docker host IP address colon 80 and expect that request to directly, reach any of the container. This is not possible because there is some air gap here. Okay. You cannot directly reach a container like that. Okay. So there are two reasons. So using this, you can just reach till the IP, reach till the EC2 instance and some process running on 80. But on the host level, there is no process running on 80. All these 80 processes running inside the containers. So how do I just target individual container? It is not possible, right? Inside the request, I cannot say reach C1 or reach C2 or reach C3 because to this request, these containers are not, this request cannot understand what is C1, what is C2 and what is C3 because those are the names given to the container by the user. Okay. So how do I now raise the containers? So you should use a concept known as port mapping, where you take a container port and then map it on the host. Okay. So you take container port 80 here and then map it onto the host. Then only a port on the host will be assigned. Okay. So let's say for this C1 container, I'm mapping a port 80. Okay. So if anyone reaches this 80, so they will be sent to this 80 on C1. Okay, since 80 on the host is already occupied, for the C2 container, I will do 81. Okay, anyone reaches 81, their request will go to 80 of the C2. Okay, similarly 82 here. So this is known as port mapping. So which we usually do with -p flag. First, you need to mention the host port colon the container port. Okay, container port, let's say for Nginx it is 80. container. And on what port on the host you want this to be accessible. I want it to accessible on the 80 as well. Okay, clear? Now, since 80 is already occupied on the host, so for this container, I use port mapping of 81. So 81 on the host, colon 80 on the container. So what if a particular container has two ports? Okay, so let me take another diagram here and explain. Okay, so there is a container, so that has two ports. Okay, so there is this container. Okay, it has two ports. Let's say there is a web server port called 80, and then there is another port called 62 something. Okay, some random port. Now, I want to, as an outsider, I want to reach the process 80 and also the process 62. Directly, I cannot reach the host, right? Container, right? C3. Correct? There is an air gap here. Getting it, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I have to do is I have to map this container port 80 to another port on the host and 62 also on the host. Okay. So if 80 is available on the host, I'll use. Otherwise, let's say I'll do 90 here. And then instead of 62, since 62 is open on the host, I'll use the same 62. Or let's say for our understanding, I'll say 64, something like this. Okay. Now this container needs two port mappings on the host. Okay. One port mapping is on the host 90 to 80. Another port mapping is from 64 to 62. Got it?
Got it.
Okay. So if someone from outside reaches this 90, the request goes to 80 on the container. If someone out from outside reaches 64 on the host, it will go to 62 on the container. Okay. Got it? So now we have three Nginx containers, right? So internally, all are running on 80. Okay. How do I know whether the Nginx is serving the web page or not? Okay. Since I cannot access this particular container from outside. Okay. So what I should do is I should exec into any container. Okay. So here I'm trying to exec into C1 container and I'll start the bash process. Okay. So here I'll simply use curl command to curl its local host on 80 port. So we are trying to curl the 80 port on the machine internally on the local host. Now, if you see internally, every container, created with Nginx will serve this HTML page. Okay, so internally only it is possible. Okay, don't try to curl it from your local machine and all. It won't work because if you curl it in the local machine, then there should be a process 80 in your local machine, but that process is not in your local machine, right? So it is here inside the Docker host. Got it? Now, how do I make the container accessible from the outside? Okay, so for this, let me remove um, all the containers stopped as well as running like this. Oh, I think I made a mistake somewhere. Docker ps hyphen a, sorry, hyphen a hyphen q I have to use quite. I think all the containers got removed. Okay, ps hyphen a, all containers got removed. Now I can start one more container, the same Nginx container. Okay, so I have to use port mapping here. Okay, so anywhere like here I can use -p and then 80 on the host. I want to forward it to 80 inside the container like this. Always the first port is host, the second port is for the container. And if you're not sure uh, about this port mapping, just do docker container run and -h or -help. Okay, here it is, publish. Okay, publish a container's port to the host. Or else, let's say you have 3 to 5 different ports that you wanted to open. Okay, if you feel -p writing 5 times is very long, okay, you can simply do -P. Then what it will do is it will open all the ports inside the container, all 5 ports, to some random ports on the host machine. So it will automatically run -P, but on the host machine, it will try to install, create some random port. Okay. Now, if you see, we just ran this command, right? If I do docker ps-a, so this time there will be some change. Okay, so here on the right hand side, it is the container port. On the machine also, it is 80. Okay, it is saying if anyone reaches 80 port on your local machine, in that EC2 instance that is running Docker, it will be sent to the 80 port of this particular C1 container. Okay, so we have to access port 80, right? So I'll see whether that 80 is open or not. Okay, so this is the VM which is running Docker. Go to security groups, and then edit inbound rules. So this has to now allow 80. So don't think this is the container port. So this is the port which I am opening because, which one I am opening this port because I mapped 80 on the container. I mean 80 port of the container to 80 on the host. So that's the reason why I'm opening 80. Okay, this is nowhere related to the container. Just open it and then go to your instances, take the IP address of this instance, and then use 80. Okay, you can see Nginx page is opened. Okay. Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that is about port mapping. If you have multiple ports that you need to open and map onto the host, you can do the same thing. So here what I'm doing is I'm creating one more container called, C2. Okay. It's based on same Nginx. Or so this HTTPD, it is also web server. Okay. And if you see here, this HTTPD 2.4 is image name, and then internally also it listens on 80. Okay, so let me just take the image name HTTPD latest. Okay, and let me run it. So docker run in the daemon mode. Okay, this time I'm opening port 8080 on the host, and container port is 80. So how do I know whether the container port is 80 or not? Definitely you should read the documentation. They will explain on what port number your application runs or their application runs. Okay, so here I'm just naming the container as Apache and the image is HTTPD. Let me take the latest one. Okay, now 8080 has to be opened, right? So let me go to the security. So modify the security group to allow 8080. Okay, and then we have the IP address. Okay, let's see if the container is started. Yes, container is started. Okay, you can see here the container is started and it is listening on 8080 externally. Okay, so let me try to access 8080 like this. See, it responded, right? Clear?
Clear.
Okay, so this is how you port map. So there is this -p. Okay, so what is this -p will do is, so let me start another container called Apache 2 based on the same HTTPD. Let's say you have to do multiple port mappings for the container. Okay. Instead of this, what I can do is I can simply say -P. So this will expose all the container ports, okay, on a random port on the machine. You can see this Apache 2 image, sorry, the container. So it listens on 80 internally, but on the host side, I did not give. Okay, it randomly assigned a host port. Okay. Got it, guys?
So
So
if
this
we have
random
like
assignment is from 32768 to I think 60999. Okay, I forgot. I think it is 32768 because the Kubernetes has 30,000 to 32767 as some standard node ports. And for the Docker, the random port, Docker will assign is from 32768 to 60999, I think. Any port in between. Okay.
for
Let
multiple ports, if we don't define also, it will publish with multiple ports, isn't it?
Yeah, so if your container has a lot of ports, okay, so then all the ports will be automatically mapped.
Oh,
Okay,
So these
so
are
that
random
is
ports of the host, right, Vikram?
correct. Yes, correct.
And they are always open.
Yes, they are always open until
Okay.
you stop this container. Okay, so that is about port mapping, and what else we are left with? Inspect is one thing I'll show you. Stats and top, we also, yeah, import and export command, right? Someone said already asked. Correct. Okay. So there are some concepts left. Okay. So when we do Docker container run, okay. So basically container starts. Okay. If you have to, stop a container. Okay. So ideally you would do Docker container stop or Docker stop followed by the name or ID of the container. Okay. So there is also one more command called Docker container kill along with Docker container stop. So both will try to stop a container, but there is a difference between a stop and a kill. Okay. So this is just like, you do kill some process ID and kill -9 and process ID, right? To kill a process. Correct? Ideally in our Linux. What is the difference between just a plain kill and kill -9? So kill is, a graceful way of terminating a process. Okay, a process gets enough time, to complete and then exit. But kill -9, it is like a force way of killing a process. Okay, a process will not get any time. Okay, immediately it gets killed, right? The same is the case with Docker container stop and Docker container kill. Okay, so Docker container stop will give the container 10 seconds to stop. Okay, otherwise, forcefully the container should be stopped, okay, by sending a kill signal internal. It will automatically send, Docker will automatically send. But if you do Docker container kill followed by the container ID, it is a force way of, terminating a container without giving it that extra 10 seconds. Okay. So that is the difference. So this is also asked in the, interview a lot of times. Okay. And there is one more command, let's say, uh, let me take the case of the Nginx only. Okay, so I'm creating this Nginx container one more time. And then you can see here on port 80, we are able to access this application, right? Now what I'll do is I'll try to exec into this container, docker exec-it. And the name of the container is C1. And let me start the bash process. Okay. And inside this, I know that um, one second. It is, I think, user share nginx HTML. Inside this folder, there are a couple of files called index.html and 50x.html. Okay, so this index.html is a default HTML page that you are actually seeing in the browser, like welcome to Nginx and all. Okay, so it is coming from this index.html file. So what I'll do is I'll simply overwrite this content. Okay, so to this index.html file, so let me write a custom content. So let me just copy it. I'll just change it. Let's say welcome to DevOps training, something like this. Okay. That's it. I just want to copy this entire content back. I'm just changing the contents of that file index.html. Okay, I changed it. Now what I'll do, if I try to refresh this page, guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it requires the start of the Nginx daemon reload, or else let me see it in incognito, then internally we will reload that process. Okay. There should be a command. First, let me see if systemctl is available or not. Okay, systemctl is not there. Reload Nginx process inside container. There should be Nginx D something should be there. I forgot the command.
But this is a different
Yeah,
container,
this
right?
one.
You have killed that container, whichever
I'm in
is
that
now in the
container.
browser.
It's a different one.
Correct. So, I mean, you're using.
No, I don't think so. Let me exit from this one. I think there is only one container running. There is only one container. It's the same one. Okay, so I will use nginx-s reload. Okay, so the nginx process got reloaded. And if I try to check now, did we, I don't know why it is not running here. Anyways, I'm going to show it again in the volumes. There is some network error, or it's not serving it properly. Maybe I need to just maybe it is welcome. Oh, now I got it. Actually, I changed in the title. You can see here, welcome to DevOps training, right? Okay. I changed in the title. I should actually change it here. Then it will show you. Okay. Getting it, guys? So let me do it now. I have it here now.
So like we are changing the interface of this server,
Sorry?
right? We are changing the interface of the server, just right?
No, yeah, we are just changing the file that Nginx by default serves as a index.html file.
Okay.
Okay, you can see it is coming now. Okay, now there is a command called docker container def, and the name of the container is C1. So this will actually show you all the files that got changed once the container started. Okay. You can see we changed this index.html file, right? Okay. If you want, you can also get the help section to see more options. Uh, you know, you can see inspect changes to files or directories on containers file system. Okay, so once the Nginx process started, so these are all the files that got changed. Okay, so here C means that file got somehow changed. Okay, A means the file got added. Okay, so once you start the image as a container, it has added some temp files, you can see. Okay, it created the bash history because we ran nginx command, right? So it started that it loaded that command into the history like this. So this is docker diff command. Okay, now finally we have one more command called import and export. Okay, so let me just show it. Again, what I'll do is I'll log in into this particular, what do you say, the C1 container, that is Nginx container. So where exactly I'm in? I'm in root. Okay. So here let me create a file, echo hello. Okay, hello.txt. Okay, so here I have created a file called hello.txt, and I will exit from this container. Now I have a couple of commands called docker import and docker export. So you can refer the documentation. um, you know so what docker export command will do is, first it will export the file system. Okay, so the difference between docker import export and docker load and save is, okay, so docker save command will do. Docker save will
It
save
will
a
save it as a
image.
tar file.
Okay,
tar
so
file.
if you have an image, it will save it as a tar file. And then once you have the image.tar, whatever tar file, you do docker image
Load,
load, and then you just load it.
untar it.
But docker export will export not the image and all, it will export only the file system. Okay, it won't do anything apart from that. Okay, so what is the syntax is docker export. Okay, so let me also get the help section. Okay, so docker export, and this is the output. Okay, so docker export, I want to export as, let's say, fs dot some tar file, the container, which one? C1 container. Okay, so it is exporting only the file system of C1 and storing it as fs.tar. Okay, you can see on the host you have fs.tar. So this is different one. This is save we use. Okay, so if you try to extract that fs.tar, okay, um, one second, ZZ format, not in ZZ format. Okay, xvf. Oh, we have extracted directly here without a folder. It's fine. Okay, now you can see here that hello.txt came, right, guys? Got it?
Yes.
So here it is extracting only the container file system and then storing it as a tar file. That is the use of export command. So I think I just messed up this whole directory. Um okay. Oh, what did I do? Dot star. Okay, so now I cleaned up. Okay, so I also destroyed this fs.tar. So let me, recreate it again. Okay, I'll export it again. Then what is the use of import command? That is where the actual challenge comes. Okay, if I do docker import ---- help, okay, you will see that the import is used to create a new image from the from that archive. Okay, so docker import, okay, docker import, and then you need to provide that particular file. Okay, so docker import fs.tar, you're importing that file system, and this is where you need to give your image name. Okay, so what this generally does is it will create a new image with that file system. Okay, docker ps hyphen a, sorry, docker image ls. Now my question is, okay, you can see my new image 1.0, some 185 MB. So now my question is, okay, so when we exported that file system, okay, so from what image we have exported that file system? From the Nginx image, right?
Yes.
Correct. But when we import the same file system as a new image, so will this new image behave just like Nginx image? No.
Yes. No.
Okay. Because if I just inspect that particular new image that I created, like my new image 1.0, okay, and if you look at if you come from the top, your CMD is null, your entry point is null. Okay, you can see here environment is null, working directory is null, entry point is null, everything is null, because you created a new image which is based on Linux OS and some AMD 64 architecture, but that image is a very minimal image. It will not have any other tools, utilities, or anything that belongs to Nginx. It is a very plain image with that file system. But why we create such image? Okay, so this image in its present state, it is unusable. You need to modify this image by adding some extra packages like Nginx, whatever depends upon your requirement. And then you create a new image by taking this as a base image. Okay, but what is advantage with this image is you have the data, you have the file system. Okay, got it, guys? Understood? So for example, to prove, if I do docker run, I'll run it in the foreground. I'll name this image, sorry, container as test, and I'll simply, run it.
Vikram,
Okay.
one question, like when we do the inspect, Docker image inspect, all this information is not included in the file system that we copied, that we like imported.
No, because so this is just the files that are available in that image. So the packages and all are completely removed when we are exporting. Okay. Now when you do docker run hyphen name test, and if you run this new image, you will see that there is no command. Okay. So that's the reason why your container is not starting. Okay. Or else what I can do is I can simply give a command like host name, then the container will start. Okay. You can see the container goes into exited state because the process got completed. So let me remove all the containers with their IDs. Okay. Clear? And if you do ls-l, and also I want to remove it automatically once it stops, just use --rm. Okay, you will see that you have that hello.txt because it is imported from the file system, right? Got it, guys? Clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that is about import and export. I think we completed everything. So only thing is this Docker container inspect, and then I can use format to, mm, apart from that, nothing, right? Okay. So that's the last command. So if you just run any container, okay. Okay, let me run Nginx again. It's a Docker ps-a. Okay. So if you want to know the IP address that is assigned to this container, so inspect is the only command, right? So Docker container inspect, and the name of the container is C1. Okay, so from here you will find the IP address, everything. Okay. So I need to just copy the whole data here. Okay. Um, so these are all the root keys. Okay, anything that is starting in this first line, like ID, created, path, args, state. Okay, like these are all the root. Okay, host, config, and then if you go to graphic driver, it is root, mount is, config is one root element. Yeah, so now network settings is also one root element. So inside the network settings, okay, you have the IP address here. Okay, so it is network settings and then IP address. Okay, so how do you frame, how do I extract that? The only IP address is, okay, so it is like this. You have to use this particular format. Okay, so Docker container inspect or Docker inspect. At the last, you can just give the name of the ID, container ID C1. Now, hyphen format. Okay, you need to use this format. And then, so first root element is network settings, and then after that, you should use IP address. Okay, so it is dot network settings, dot indicates the root, dot network settings, dot IP address. Okay, and then give the name of the container. It will simply print that value. So let's say I wanted to get the state. Okay, so where is the state? Okay, if you look at the root element, state is the root element, and inside that status is running. Okay, so state, status. Okay, it is dot state. Okay, dot state dot status. Okay, so it will say, it will just print that value assigned to it. Okay, so currently it is in the running state, right? Okay, status is running. Okay, if I simply stop it, so Docker stop C1, and then if I try to look at the status, you can see it is in the exited status. Okay, I can now start again, and then if you check the status, it is running.